Of a huge empire, and like all huge empires, it has a lot of migration to its center.
Beneath the Colosseum, a hidden chamber has just been unlocked, revealing something truly bizarre.
This is really the waiting room for anything that's going to die in the arena.
Ancient naval mechanisms, mysterious artifacts, and puzzling structures hint at secrets lost for centuries.
Sta sopra l'intonaco e qui andiamo su ancora decori in colore.
What was really happening under Rome's greatest arena? Exploration of the Colosseum's underground chambers, known as the hypogeum, reveals intricate networks used to house gladiators and animals before combat. Imagine stepping back in time to ancient Rome, where thousands of people gathered in a massive stadium to watch wild battles. Enslaved men, criminals, and fierce animals fought for survival in the Colosseum. But what made these battles even more thrilling was something hidden beneath the wooden floor, a secret maze of tunnels and rooms known as the hypogeum. This underground world helped create jaw-dropping moments in the arena. When the Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, the Colosseum started falling apart. Almost two-thirds of the massive structure, including the hypogeum, crumbled. For centuries, it sat in ruins. But in 2018, experts decided to bring this forgotten part of history back to life. They spent years restoring the tunnels so that visitors could finally walk where gladiators once prepared for combat. Just recently, officials revealed the newly restored hypogeum to the public. For the first time in 2,000 years, people can explore its underground passageways. A group of 80 experts, including archaeologists and engineers, worked on this project. They used high-tech tools to clean the walls and remove dirt and algae that had built up over time. During the restoration, experts uncovered new clues about the Colosseum's history. Over 400 years, different emperors made changes to the arena, adding new features. The hypogeum itself was like a backstage for gladiator fights. It had hidden lifts, ropes, and trapdoors that allowed animals and fighters to appear suddenly, adding to the excitement. Even though the hypogeum is now open, there's more work to be done. Officials plan to add a new wooden floor above it, making it possible to host concerts and events, bringing new life to this ancient wonder. Next up, discoveries of tunnels beneath the Colosseum that connected to nearby gladiator schools and facilitated the movement of performers and animals. Beneath the Colosseum, hidden from the roaring crowds, lies a network of tunnels and chambers. This underground world was the heart of the arena, where gladiators, animals, and workers prepared for battle. Now, after centuries of decay, these tunnels have been restored, allowing visitors to walk through history. The hypogeum was like a backstage for the deadly shows above. It had lifts, trapdoors, and cages where wild animals like lions, bears, and tigers were kept before being released into the arena. Gladiators waited below, listening to the cheers above, not knowing if they would face a fierce animal or another warrior. Special mechanisms allowed organizers to create surprises, making the games even more thrilling. Not everyone used the same tunnels. The Emperor and the Vestal Virgins had their own secret passageways, separate from the rest of the spectators. These tunnels were decorated with unique tiles and led directly to their imperial residences, allowing them to enter and exit without being seen by the public. For centuries, the hypogeum was left in ruins. A small part was open to the public in 2010, but most of it remained hidden. Now, after years of work by archaeologists and engineers, visitors can finally walk through more of these ancient tunnels on special pathways. The team carefully cleaned and repaired the chambers, revealing details about how the Colosseum once operated. The restoration isn't over yet. A new retractable floor will soon be built above the hypogeum, protecting it while also allowing events to be held inside the Colosseum once again. This project brings an ancient world back to life, letting people experience the hidden side of Rome's greatest arena like never before. Naval battle mechanisms, the engineering feats that allowed the Colosseum to be flooded for mock naval battles, showcased ancient Roman innovation. The Colosseum wasn't just a place for gladiator fights, it once held massive naval battles right in the arena. The Romans loved a good show, and these naumachii, or stage sea battles, were among the most spectacular events ever seen. Imagine an arena filled with water, real ships floating inside, and condemned prisoners forced to fight as sailors. The battles recreated famous wars, like the Greeks against the Persians, giving the audience the thrill of a real war, without the danger. At first, these shows were staged in artificial basins built just for naval battles. Julius Caesar started the trend, and Augustus later built an enormous one with its own aqueduct to fill it with water. But for a short time, the Colosseum itself became a battleground for ships. Special openings allowed water to flood the arena, creating a temporary lake. The challenge was making it deep enough to float ships while keeping the ground sealed so the water wouldn't just drain away. This was an incredible feat of engineering, proving just how skilled the Romans were at creating grand spectacles. Thousands of men were forced to reenact battles, with ships maneuvering like they would in real combat. The audience watched in amazement as fighters clashed on the water, with some ships sinking and men struggling to survive. These weren't just actors, many were criminals sentenced to die, fighting for a slim chance at mercy. However, the naval battles at the Colosseum didn't last long. Eventually, the underground chambers were built, making it impossible to flood the arena again. But for a short time, Rome's most famous amphitheater wasn't just a stage for warriors. It was a sea where history played out one final time. Gladiator graffiti, engraved by gladiators, provides personal insights into their lives and experiences. The Colosseum wasn't just a battleground. It was also a place where people left their mark, quite literally. Archaeologists have found graffiti carved into its walls, giving us a glimpse into what ancient Romans thought about the arena and its fighters. Some of it praised gladiators, treating them like heroes. Others just wanted to leave a sign of their visit. And then there were the symbols meant to ward off bad luck, like two carved phalluses, likely made after a huge fire in AD 217. Romans believed these symbols could protect them from misfortune, so they scratched them into the stone, hoping to keep the arena safe. Gladiators were the stars of the Colosseum, but their lives were brutal. Many were slaves, prisoners, or criminals, trained to fight for the entertainment of the masses. Some volunteered, chasing fame, fortune, or simply a better life. The crowds loved them. Their battles weren't just about survival. They were a display of skill, endurance, and courage. That's why their names were scratched into the walls. Fans admired their strength and wanted to remember them. The idea of gladiator fights may have started as a funeral tradition, with warriors battling to honor the dead. Over time, it grew into a spectacle, becoming a major part of Roman culture. The biggest fights took place in the Colosseum, where thousands cheered, bet on their favorites, and even scrawled messages on the stone to celebrate their victories. These ancient carvings tell us that gladiators weren't just fighters, they were legends in their own time. Even after the games ended, their stories remained hidden in the walls of the Colosseum, waiting to be rediscovered centuries later. Animal holding cells are the compartments where exotic animals are kept before being released into the arena. Beneath the Colosseum, hidden from the cheering crowds, was a massive underground network where wild animals were kept before they were released into the arena. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, and even crocodiles were trapped in the dark, waiting for their moment to be unleashed. The Romans built special cages in these underground chambers, called the hypogeum, where the animals were kept until it was time for them to fight or be part of brutal executions. Some animals battled each other, while others faced off against warriors called senators and bestiarii, trained to hunt them for the crowd's entertainment. To get these deadly creatures to the arena floor, the Colosseum had a system of 28 wooden elevators. Each was powered by teams of slaves turning huge wooden cranks. The elevators lifted the cages 24 feet up, where a trapdoor would suddenly open, and the animal would charge out into the blinding light of the arena. Thousands of Romans roared as they watched these battles, some even betting on which animal would survive. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands of animals were killed in these brutal games. Emperor Titus once held a 100-day event where 9,000 animals were slaughtered. The sand on the arena floor was there to soak up the blood. Now, 1,500 years later, the Colosseum's killer elevator is back. A group of historians and builders recreated one of these ancient lifts using the same tools the Romans did. They even tested it with a wolf, not a lion. Instead of fighting to the death, this wolf got a treat after making history as the first animal to rise from the Colosseum's underground in over a millennium. Intricate frescoes, mosaics, and other naval artifacts have been unearthed, showcasing the artistic endeavors and aesthetic preferences of ancient Rome. Right next to the Colosseum, hidden beneath layers of time, archaeologists have found something incredible: a beautifully preserved wall covered in mosaics and frescoes. This wall once stood inside a grand Roman house known as a domus more than 2,000 years ago. The artwork is made from tiny shells, colorful glass, rare stones, and imported tiles. It is unlike anything else found in Rome. Even in places like Pompeii, there is no other decoration quite like this. The artwork tells a powerful story. It shows weapons, musical instruments, ships, and tridents. These were not just random designs. They meant something. The person who owned this house was likely a high-ranking Roman officer who had won an important battle. To celebrate his victory, he filled his home with expensive decorations that showed his success. But power in Rome was never permanent. When Emperor Augustus took control, this family seemed to have lost everything. Their luxurious home was buried, and a grain store was built right on top of it. The location of this discovery makes it even more exciting. This house stood in one of the most important areas of ancient Rome. Just nearby is a massive palace built by Emperor Tiberius, which was later loved by Emperor Nero. This part of the city was home to Rome's most powerful and ambitious people. It was the center of politics, wealth, and military power. The owner of this house wanted to prove his status, and he did so through his home's decorations. The details in the artwork are stunning. The background shows small shrines with columns and flowers. In front, there are stacks of weapons, large warships, and helmets shaped like animal heads worn by Celtic warriors. The weapons and ships suggest that the owner had a military past, likely someone who had led troops in battle and wanted to remind visitors of his victories. Every piece of this artwork was carefully chosen to tell a story of strength and success. Archaeologists believe that the design of this house was inspired by styles from the Near East. The use of colored glass, marble, and special volcanic stones shows the owner's love for luxury. Even the walls had lead pipes inside them that fed water into fountains and decorative pools. This house was built for grand gatherings, where the owner could impress guests with his wealth and power. This lost artwork is finally coming back to light. After years of excavation, experts are working to make it accessible to the public. Soon, visitors will be able to step into this forgotten part of Rome's past, see these breathtaking mosaics and frescoes, and imagine the life of the powerful man who once lived here. This discovery is not just about art, it is about ambition, victory, and the rise and fall of power in ancient Rome. In 2007, archaeologists announced the discovery of a cave beneath Rome's Palatine Hill, believed to be the Lupercal, the legendary site where, according to Roman mythology, a she-wolf nursed the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus. There is an old Roman legend about two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were abandoned as babies and left to die. But instead of perishing, they were found by a she-wolf in a cave at the foot of the Palatine Hill. The wolf took care of them, feeding them until a shepherd named Faustulus found them and raised them as his own. These boys later go on to find Rome, with Romulus becoming its first king. The cave where the she-wolf cared for them became known as the Lupercal, and every year the Romans held a festival there called the Lupercalia, a celebration of fertility and protection. Priests called Luperci would gather, sacrifice goats and dogs, and then run through the streets, lightly striking people, especially women, with strips of animal skin, believing it would bring good luck and help them have children. For centuries, people wondered if the Lupercal cave was real or just part of the legend. Then, in 2007, archaeologists in Rome made an announcement that got everyone's attention. While working on restoring the remains of Emperor Augustus's palace, they discovered an underground chamber about 16 meters below the surface. It was a circular space, about 8 meters high, decorated with seashells, mosaics, and pieces of marble. In the center of the ceiling, there was an image of a white eagle, a powerful symbol of the Roman Empire. Could this be the legendary Lupercal? The location seemed important. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, had a strong connection to Romulus. In fact, before choosing the name Augustus, he had considered calling himself Romulus to show that he was the new founder of Rome. So, it made sense that he might have built his palace near such a symbolic place. But not everyone was convinced. Some experts argued that this wasn't the Lupercal at all, but rather a decorative fountain or banquet room built during Emperor Nero's time. They believed the real cave was lower on the hill, closer to the modern-day church of Santa Anastasia. Even though there is still debate, the discovery remains one of the most exciting finds in Rome. Whether or not it is the actual Lupercal, it gives us a glimpse into the world of ancient Romans, their legends, and how they tied their past to their future. The search for the true cave continues, but this discovery keeps the mystery alive, making Rome's history even more fascinating. The Villa of the Papyri Scrolls, unearthed in Herculaneum, contained a vast library of carbonized scrolls preserved by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Imagine finding a house buried under tons of volcanic ash for nearly 2,000 years, hiding lost knowledge and ancient treasures. That's exactly what happened with the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum, a luxurious Roman mansion frozen in time when Mount Vesuvius erupted in AD 79. This wasn't just any house, it was one of the grandest villas in the entire Roman world, filled with beautiful statues, colorful paintings, and an entire library of ancient scrolls. The villa was built right by the sea, offering stunning views with grand open spaces, elegant gardens, and fancy columns everywhere. It might have belonged to Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesoninus, a powerful Roman, or possibly even the philosopher Philodemus. Whoever lived here surrounded themselves with art, knowledge, and beauty. The house had multiple levels, terraces overlooking the sea, and large rooms where important guests were entertained. There were even bathhouses and a massive swimming pool. But when Vesuvius erupted, disaster struck. A deadly wave of hot ash and gas buried the villa under nearly 100 feet of volcanic rock. Everything inside was charred, but also preserved, waiting to be discovered centuries later. In 1750, workers digging a well accidentally stumbled upon it. Soon, tunnels were carved to explore the buried villa, revealing stunning statues, including a bronze bust of Scipio Africanus and beautiful dancing women in flowing dresses. The statues were so perfectly crafted that they looked almost alive. But the most exciting find was the library, the only complete ancient library ever discovered. Over 1,800 scrolls were packed in wooden shelves, waiting to be read. These fragile rolls of papyrus were burned by the heat, turning into blackened lumps. At first, people thought they were just pieces of coal, and even threw some away. But then, scholars realized they contained lost writings, mostly about philosophy, including the teachings of Epicurus, who believed in enjoying life while staying wise. Excavations stopped in 1765 because people were worried about digging under their homes. The villa's exact location was forgotten for 200 years, until the 1980s, when researchers finally found it again. Even today, most of the villa remains buried. Technology now helps experts slowly uncover the secrets hidden in those scrolls, bringing the past back to life little by little. The Domus Aurea, Nero's Golden House, Emperor Nero's opulent palace, buried and forgotten for centuries, was rediscovered in the 15th century. Just imagine you're walking through Rome and suddenly falling into a hidden underground palace. That's exactly how the Domus Aurea, Nero's Golden House, was rediscovered. This wasn't just any palace. It was massive, luxurious, and unlike anything before. Built after the Great Fire of 64 AD, it covered parts of 3 hills and even had an artificial lake. Emperor Nero, famous for his love of extravagance, designed it as his dream home. The walls sparkled with marble, the ceilings glowed with gold, and frescoes covered every surface. There were gardens, vineyards, and even a statue of Nero himself, as tall as a modern building. But Nero didn't get to enjoy his masterpiece for long. Just a few years later, he died, and his successors wanted to erase his memory. They stripped the palace of its treasures, filled in parts with earth, and built over it. The famous Colosseum, it was built right where Nero's lake used to be. The baths of Trajan, they sat on top of what remained. Within decades, the Golden House was completely buried. But in a strange way, this helped preserve its incredible artwork, hidden away from damage. Centuries passed, and people forgot about the palace, until one day in the late 1400s, a young man fell through a hole in the ground and landed inside. What he saw amazed him. Strange painted figures covered the walls, still vibrant after all those years. Soon, artists like Raphael and Michelangelo lowered themselves inside with ropes to see these lost wonders. The style of these paintings, later called grotesques, inspired Renaissance art and even influenced modern designs. The Domus Aurea remained underground, but time wasn't kind. Moisture, tree roots, and heavy rains damaged the structure. Parts of the ceiling even collapsed. Restoration efforts continue today, and while it has reopened in recent years, it remains fragile. Hidden beneath Rome, it's a glimpse into a lost world, one of the most mysterious and breathtaking discoveries of all time. The Mithraeum of Circus Maximus, discovered beneath Rome's famous chariot racing stadium, is a temple dedicated to the god Mithras. This is the place where history comes alive, where crowds once roared, and where the most thrilling chariot races took place. Welcome to the Circus Maximus, the biggest and most famous stadium of ancient Rome. It wasn't just any stadium, it was the heart of entertainment, where over 150,000 people gathered to watch the most intense races, grand celebrations, and even wild animal hunts. This wasn't just a place to have fun, it was a stage for power, politics, and spectacle, where Rome's leaders showed off their wealth and won the love of the people. Long before it became the grand stadium we picture today, this area was just open land between two hills, the Aventine and the Palatine. Early Romans held races here with simple turning posts and wooden seating. Over time, the stadium grew bigger and grander. The mighty Julius Caesar expanded it, making it longer and adding more seats. And later, Emperor Augustus brought in something incredible, an enormous obelisk from Egypt. This wasn't just decoration, it was a symbol of Rome's victory and its growing power. Imagine the effort it took to bring this massive stone all the way from Egypt. Chariot races were the main event. Picture it, teams of horses thundering down the track, drivers gripping the reins tightly, the crowd screaming as the chariots sped around the turns. It was dangerous, fast, and full of excitement. But the Circus Maximus wasn't just for racing. It hosted huge celebrations, religious festivals, and even public executions. At one point, 135 days of the year were dedicated to games. Rome loved its entertainment, and the emperors made sure the people got plenty of it. But as time passed, things changed. The rise of Christianity made these games less popular. The last big event happened in the 6th century, and after that, the Grand Circus slowly faded away. Today, it's a peaceful park, but if you listen closely, maybe you can still hear the echoes of galloping horses and the roar of an ancient crowd. The tomb of the Scipios, this ancient family tomb, rediscovered in the 17th century along the Via Appia, housed the remains of the Scipio family, including Scipio Africanus, famed for defeating Hannibal. There's a hidden piece of history in Rome tucked away under a hill behind a quiet street. It's the tomb of the Scipios, an ancient burial site for one of Rome's most powerful families. For centuries, this tomb was lost, forgotten under layers of time. But when it was finally rediscovered, it revealed something fascinating. Stories of the past carved into stone, resting in a place that once stood just outside the city, but is now right in the middle of modern Rome. The tomb dates back to the early 3rd century BC, built after the famous Via Appia road opened. The first person buried there was Lucius Cornelius Scipio Barbatus, a Roman consul. His sarcophagus is the only one that survived in one piece, now displayed in the Vatican. The tomb had space for about 30 burials, and over the years, more family members were laid to rest there. Even the poet Ennius, a friend of the family, had a statue inside. But not all Scipios were buried there. Some, like the famous Scipio Africanus, chose a different resting place. As time passed, the tomb transformed. By the 2nd century BC, it was not just a burial site, but a tribute to the family's legacy. Decorations were added, showing Rome's growing love for Greek culture. But by the 1st century AD, burials slowed down. Eventually, people stopped maintaining it. The city expanded, the landmarks changed, and the tomb was forgotten. It was found again in 1614, hidden under a vineyard. But after a brief discovery, it was lost once more. Then, in 1780, vineyard owners stumbled upon it while remodeling their wine cellar. This time, scholars were able to study it, and its treasures, like inscriptions and a gold ring, ended up in the Vatican. Today, visitors can step inside this ancient tomb, walking through its rock-cut chambers, standing in a place where Rome's past still lingers. Rome never stops surprising us. From hidden chambers in the Colosseum to strange underground discoveries, each new find adds another layer to its rich and mysterious history. Who knows what other secrets are still waiting to be uncovered beneath the Eternal City?